When it comes to learning how to learn, why do we need a science for that? Many people wonder, isn't learning just common sense? Don't we all just know how to learn? It turns out learning is actually not intuitive. There are many myths about learning that are popularly believed despite not being true. For example, you may have heard of learning styles. The idea behind learning styles is that everyone has a preferred mode of receiving information. So some people prefer to receive information visually, some people may prefer to receive information auditorily. And according to the learning styles idea, people learn best when receiving information according to their preferred mode of receiving information. So if you're someone who prefers to receive information visually, you'll learn best when you see information. If you're someone who prefers to receive information auditorily, you'll learn best when listening to information. Now think for a moment about what the evidence would need to look like for this claim about learning styles to be true. What would the pattern of evidence need to look like if this is true? In contrast, think about what the pattern of evidence would need to look like if this is actually a bogus claim. So if this claim is not accurate, what would the pattern out in the world likely look like? You might even want to pause the video for a moment to think about this. You may have come up with something along the following lines. For the claim about learning styles to be true, the pattern of evidence would need to look something like this. Among people who prefer to learn information visually, they should show better overall learning on a measure of learning when receiving the information visually compared to when receiving the information auditorily, and vice versa. Among people who prefer to receive information auditorily, they should show better overall learning on a measure of learning when they're listening to information compared to when they receive the information visually. It turns out that scientists have searched for this pattern of evidence over and over, and none have found this pattern. Instead, although it is the case that people have preferences, so some people do prefer to receive information visually, and others do prefer to receive information auditorily, adherence to those preferences turns out not to matter for overall learning. So the claim about learning styles isn't accurate according to the evidence that's out there, yet it's a pervasive belief. In our Science of Learning class, my colleagues and I have our students carry out an exercise that we call accurate or bogus. And the task is for students to evaluate a claim about learning. So they have to decide if the claim is likely accurate or likely bogus, and they do so by attempting to evaluate evidence. And they have to at least come up with some idea of what the evidence would need to look like for the claim to be true, and what the evidence out there would need to look like if the claim isn't true. So for example, let's say someone tells you that playing brain training games will make you a better learner. You may be familiar with brain training games. These are apps that you can download to play on either your smartphone or your tablet device. And there are many different tasks to the game, and you can get better at the game as you go. What would the pattern of evidence need to look like if the claim about brain training games, that it helps your learning, is true? And in contrast, what would the pattern of evidence need to look like if the claim about brain training games is actually not true? Maybe it doesn't help you to become a better learner. What would the pattern of evidence look like then? Here's another example. Let's say someone tells you that if you would like to learn an artist's genre so that you can identify a new painting that you've never seen before as being by that particular artist. Maybe you're able to see a new Picasso painting that you've never seen before and you say, oh, that looks like a Picasso. For this type of learning, maybe someone claims to you that you will learn better if you intersperse paintings by that particular artist among paintings by other artists and of other genres, as compared to if you are presented with paintings by that artist in close succession or near one another. What would the evidence out there need to look like for this claim about interspersing paintings by different artists to be true. In contrast, what would the pattern of evidence out there need to look like if this claim is actually not true? Well, if you decided that the claim about brain training games is likely not true, you would be correct. The abundance of scientific evidence out there suggests that playing brain training games doesn't help you to become a better overall learner. It may make you better at the games themselves, but that doesn't translate to better overall learning in any generalizable way. If you decided that the claim about interspersing an artist's paintings among other paintings by other artists will lead to better learning of that artist's genre, you'd actually be correct. The scientific evidence that we have suggests that that actually is a more effective way of learning an artist's genre, even though it's counterintuitive. When you ask people while they're in the midst of the learning process what they think is helping their learning more, people tend to believe that having paintings presented in close succession leads to better learning, when in fact the opposite is the case. So remember, learning is not intuitive. This is why we need to turn to science.